There has been a wave of changes surrounding Chase credit cards and Chase Bank as a whole, introducing new cards, new rules, higher annual fees, all credits, and all basically in the spirit of competition with American Express. What with the introduction of Chase's own pop-up jail, just like American Express, in which you may or may not be eligible based on Chase's system, you can get the credit card, but not the bonus, or just not at all. Which for me personally kind of leaves things up in the air because it's like, does 524 even exist anymore? Is it now just some back end algorithm that's going to tell you whether or not you're eligible for a bonus or not based on whatever back end criteria they may have? And if that's true, for everybody that's been coveting their 524 status, does that even matter anymore? Heck, even the changes on these Sapphire cards has me rethinking this entire game as a whole, because if you guys weren't aware, as Sebi mentions right here on his website, Chase has eliminated the 48-month bonus restriction rule, meaning every 4 years in the past, you were able to get a Sapphire card bonus. And so now Chase has introduced an Amex style once per lifetime language, meaning you could only get one bonus on a Sapphire card once in your lifetime. And at least at this present moment, I really don't feel like going through the forbidden method of being able to bypass the once per lifetime language with Amex or Chase. And that is just reincarnation, like literally just coming back as a new person, having a new lifetime, and thus being eligible to get a whole new bonus again on all of these cards, right? I don't want to go through the reincarnation method. And even though I've seen on Reddit of people who had a Sapphire Preferred or Reserve and has since downgraded and then reapplied for the new Reserve and has gotten the bonus, and some people haven't, things are just so much up in the air. And I really do feel like Chase has just kind of reset the game for everybody because over the years, everybody has always coveted their 524 status. Take me as an example right now. I've actually been gardening technically for about a year or 2 years now because I knew that the 48-month rule excluded me from getting another bonus on my Sapphire card for an additional about 4 or 5 months. I'm literally on month 43 or 44 for my Sapphire Preferred. And that was literally the only reason that I was making sure to stay under 524. So that way, when the time came around, the 48-month rule, I would reapply for another Sapphire card, get a whole new bonus, and then we would all be hunky dory. But Chase is too smart, and they were ahead of the curve, and they have since changed that and introduced this new once per lifetime language. And so, if things are kind of up in the air, and like 524 may exist, it may not exist based on whatever they're going to be changing in the future with this new pop up jail. 48-month rule is gone, and now it's just a once per lifetime rule. And so, if that was the only reason I was staying under 524 was for my Sapphire Preferred bonus, and if that is pretty much no longer an option, well, I think it's time to kind of open the floodgates because, well, I have so many different credit cards that I want to apply for right now, like Citi cards, Barclays credit cards, even some American Express credit cards, and just a ton of other ecosystems that I'm trying to get into right now. And so I don't really want to wait anymore. And so what I did was, as a last hurrah, as a last ditch effort to try to get as much as I possibly can from Chase before I kind of go open season, is I literally last week was 424 and have since applied for 3 new Chase credit cards all within about 30 minutes. That's right. I applied for 3 new credit cards, and we're going to talk about it right now. Well, the first one that I applied for, which was wishful thinking, but I just decided, if I'm going to try it, if there was ever a time to try, I'm going to try again. Now, I got 4 business ink cards last year, and we know with the most recent changes that the ink cards have been dramatically harder and harder to get approved for. And so I just threw caution into the wind and said, I'm just going to try for one. I have literally nothing to lose. And so I applied for the Ink Business Cash. And sure enough, as you may or may not know, as illuminated to me from the Discord, Mr. Jim K and a few others, it basically nowadays with Chase, it seems like you can never actually get an automatic approval, or at least it's a lot more rare to get an automatic approval for Chase cards. So the first card that I applied for was the Ink Business Cash, and I was subsequently in pending review, ended up calling Recon, and I was denied. Now, the wishful thinking was that I could have gotten one more in card as my last hurrah. The reason being is that it has a welcome offer of $750, aka 75,000 Chase points, after spending $6,000 in the first 6 months of card opening. So it's a very easy card to get a welcome offer on. 0% APR, $0 annual fee. I mean, I absolutely love them and they're amazing. but I wasn't necessarily shocked to hear that I was denied. In fact, I inspected that. So what did I do? I went and I applied for a second credit card, that being the Marriott Bonvoy Boundless card. Now, I was between two different ones. I was between the IHG Premier that had a record high welcome offer, or this Marriott Bonvoy that also had its own record high welcome offer. Right now, for a $95 annual fee, you could earn 5 free night awards after spending $5,000 in the first 3 months. And I didn't necessarily fully care about this card, but after doing a little bit of research, I realized that there were a couple of destinations that we're either going to or planning to go to that I would be able to use these 5 free nights on. And so instead of just not applying for a Chase card, I decided to apply for a personal Chase card to get me to 524. In which, after applying for this, like for example, my wife mentioned to me that it would be pretty cool to go to Germany. And after doing like a day's worth of research, I realized that a lot of the different hotels in Munich, which would be very easy to get to flight wise, happened to have hotels that were all around that 50K level, or could actually top up like a couple thousand points to stay at a really nice hotel. And so with that, I decided to go for the Marriott Boundless card, because between here and actually even some places I saw in Japan and even the Caribbean, I saw that there were a couple of options in case I really needed it to go to some of these really cool destinations, not the highest end places, but ones that can be supplemented from this credit card itself. And I guess technically, with having the Boundless now, part of that reason is I could technically upgrade to the Ritz-Carlton card. Is this something that I'm like actually planning to do, and that's why I got the Boundless? No. In fact, this card is very likely to change in the not so distant future, and I think most people see the writing on the wall with the Ritz-Carlton card. At least I have that option, I guess, technically with the Boundless down the line, but it's not something I'm actually actively working towards personally for me. But it's there, and maybe it would be cool, but will it stay in its current form? Probably not. Probably not. We'll see. And so that's why I applied for it, in which I was subsequently denied for the card. That's right. I was denied for the card. However, I actually ended up calling Recon, and after describing to them this, like, oh, I'm excited to get into the world of Marriott, and them just looking out and seeing, like, oh, you actually use your Sapphire Preferred fairly often, and you actually use all of your chasing business cards fairly often as well. I make sure to use most of my chase cards for this exact reason. They ended up denying me initially, but then actually going through to Recon after a little bit of reconsideration, and I was subsequently approved, baby. That's right. We got the Marriott Bonvoy Boundless card. And we're already starting to put some spend towards it, in which I can get those 5 free nights, and maybe I can book some really cool hotels with those free nights and just get a little bit more of a foothold into the world of Marriott after so many years of not going to them. And so that was cool. Okay, we got one approval, and now we are legit 524. But I didn't want to just end there, because even though it was an approval and one denial, I said, well, what is the one card that I also would find a lot of value in that Chase offers that also isn't necessarily subject to the 524 rule? Well, as we know, the Amazon Prime Visa seems to be the only card in Chase's lineup that actually lets you get approved very often while being over 524. I guess it's with their partnership. More and more people to have Amazon cards is a huge incentive. And so they've relaxed the rule for this particular card. And so many people get approved over 524. And so what did I do? I went and I applied for the Amazon Prime Visa, because they had an offer of $250 for a gift card instantly upon approval for this particular card. So you don't have to spend a minimum amount. You don't have to do anything. As long as you're approved, you get $250 immediately in your account. And my wife got this card not too long ago for a $200 offer. So I said, you know what? If I'm really going to go all in, let's just go for the Amazon Prime Visa and try to get approved for this. So what do? We applied for the Prime Visa and were subsequently denied. That's right. I was denied for the Amazon Prime Visa. And the reason being was that, you guessed it, I applied for maybe too many different credit cards in a short period of time. And rest assured, I did know that this was a very big possibility, but to me, the reward outweighed the risks, because if I was able to get approved for that initial chasing business cash, that would have been 75,000 extra points that I could have used towards flights, hotels, and stuff. So, I risked it for the biscuit. It didn't work out. Almost didn't work out on the Boundless, but we did get that. And I have since called Recon on the Prime Visa, and I'm going to continue calling to see if I could overturn it. But at least in my latest call, they mentioned that It's not even giving them the option to like move credit lines around. It's not giving them anything. It's just too much requested credit in the last, certain amount of time. And you might be wondering, like, Anthony, this is like a cash card essentially. Like, why are you not applying for another card or Chase card that would give you points and miles? Well, I kind of can use the cash, as well for a certain amount of things. I mean, more specifically, I wanted to kind of upgrade my setup just a little. And so I have, a few different things in here, like a camera or maybe a new mic and a stand and like everything to kind of upgrade the entire, YouTube setup if I can. And so all of that together is about $1,000. So I'm thinking, $250 off that might be actually worthwhile. So that's why I ended up applying for this. But I called into Recon and they said, well, no, you're still denied, bro. That's right. You are not going to get approved for the Amazon Prime Visa. And I did try to move my credit limits around. Some people ask, like, what's the best way to get around Recon in some ways? And a lot of the times I just say, can we move credit limits around? Can I move some credit limit from my newly acquired Boundless card? Move like $1,000 limit over to the Prime Visa and allow me to get approved. They told me, well, no, we're not even getting that option at the moment. And the reason being is that you have requested too much credit over the past, X amount of time. They didn't actually specify an amount of time, but, because I applied for the ink, the Boundless, and the Prime in such a short amount of time, I think that swayed their decision in a bit of a way, for sure. And so I will say a couple of things. Number one, even though you see me apply for three different credit cards and kind of changing a couple of things and not necessarily waiting as long as I thought I was going to, just based on the changes of the 48-month rule, just know I also do have my wife who is open and actively applying for credit cards herself. And I believe she's like 324 and something like that. So I'm not necessarily fully locked out of Chase cards in and itself. That's a good hedge to kind of have. And so you might be wondering from your own situation, where do we go from here? And I think AI beautifully sums it up right here, which is given the current situation, what should we do next? It's often used when a problem hasn't been resolved or when a significant event has occurred, prompting a need to determine the next course of action. It implies a need for direction. And so I feel like with all of these different changes, at least for me personally, a lot of things are up in the air. Does 524 exist anymore in its current form? Is the Sapphire once per lifetime rule really into effect? Is this 48-month rule really gone for good? Are we still going to get higher annual fees, new credits, and all these different things? With that, there's just so much more uncertainty. And so, at least for me personally, and given my circumstances, there are so many other cards in the world. Like, I am trying to apply for so many different cards, like this City AA Advantage Platinum Select card here. Personal card has a $99 annual fee that's waived for the first 12 months, and you get 80,000 AA miles that I could be using towards so many different flights. I want to get the Alaska Personal and the Business Credit Card. I even want to get a City Strata Premier if this bonus gets a little bit elevated. Like, this is a card that I've been sleeping on for a while. I want to get those points. Heck, I still want to get my Hilton Aspire card and probably a lot of them down the line. So there's just like so many different credit cards that I really want to get in this given moment, especially when spend is kind of high and I have a lot of different travels coming up that I want to subsidize with all of these credit card points and miles, what have you. And so, like I said, the only thing that I was waiting for is my Sapphire Preferred bonus to be up, 48 months, 4 years. And since I don't have to wait for that necessarily anymore, I've decided that I'm just not going to care anymore. And I'm just going to apply for any cards that I really wanted. And I've kind of always done that. I never really was super beholden to the 524 status, but I really did want to get an additional bonus on a Sapphire card. And since that has kind of gone away, I've decided, at least on my own profile, to kind of go all in on all of these other ecosystems that I've just been excited for and trying to get for, honestly, for the last year now. But also for those of you who have also said to me in the Discord or just comment sections, a lot of you also seem to be in my same situation, just waiting on the Sapphire card. And if this just gives you that little bit of push or a little bit of grace to be able to, hey, maybe we don't have to worry about this as much as most people were, down the line. And given, of course, you're somebody that already has, 5, 10, 15, 20 different credit cards, this is not like your first 5 credit cards. I think if you still have your first 5 credit cards, yeah, make them Chase. Get all those good welcome offers, get your good Chase cards, and set up your solid foundation to be using towards everyday spend. Yes, 100% on that. But for somebody who has now close to 30 different credit cards, I'm kind of playing this game in a different way, and I'm kind of just moving and grooving. I just have so many different goals in mind. And so that's why Chase, with all these changes, has kind of reset my roadmap for the future and why I've decided to apply for all these said credit cards. And just as I talked about with Chase kind of copying American Express and exactly why these changes are going to continue in the future, I want you to check out this video next because I describe exactly the roadmap for the future of all premium credit cards and any of these Amexes, Chases, Capital Ones, and exactly how to navigate that for more vacations down the line, which should be the name of the game to begin with. Subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the newsletter, link down below for insights just like this, and the free Discord as well just below that. So I hope to see you there. Hope you get some value from it, and I appreciate every single one of you. Thank you so much. Take care.